sorry for your condition, so we hope that you send us some of your media. I also want to take a moment to thank Jeff Jackson, class of '87, and his wife Gretchen, who are here today. Their support of this program has made it all possible, so we're very grateful and happy to have them. I'm just going to introduce our moderator to you today, Erin O'Hearn. You probably recognize her. She's a news anchor for ABC News. I'm so happy I didn't say NBC. I'm like in my head the whole time. She joined the Action News team in January of 2006, and before arriving in Philadelphia, she worked for the sister station in Durham, North Carolina, where she covered everything from breaking news to the UNC pep rallies to hurricanes ripping through the Tar Heel state. Erin also has a strong background in covering politics, as she began her broadcasting career at Capital News 9 in Albany, New York. Before diving into news, she spent time producing episodes of MTV documentary called True Life, so you might know about that. And while working for MTV, she spent most of her time in New York City, traveled all over the country following teens and young adults as they grappled with issues like bipolar disorder and drug addiction. She's very interested in how children think and how they learn and how to asset them for really successful lives and careers. And we're particularly happy that she's going to be here to introduce our panel and to moderate what I know will be a lively discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gabby. And hi, everyone. I always love coming to Germantown Academy, just to add. I have a really loud voice, so I don't know if I can do this, but I always love coming to Germantown Academy. First of all, I have 3 young children here, 6, 4, and 2. My little girl's in 1st grade, and I have a pre-K, so if any of you do K to K, I think maybe you'll meet them eventually. But every day I ask them, I come here and I say, you know what? How about I go to Germantown Academy and you guys can go to work? And they say emphatically, no, we don't want to do that. So either they really love GA or they really have become disillusioned with the TV news industry. I think it's because they love GA. Well, I think you guys are really lucky because this is a great panel. I've been doing some research on their accomplishments, and I feel pretty minuscule in my career compared to what they've accomplished. And I think it's a unique opportunity because as we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Writing Center, I think no matter what part of media arts that you go into, you have to have strength in writing, whether it's actually writing or interpreting writing into editing or a different kind of storytelling. So I think you guys are really lucky to have this experience. I certainly didn't have it in high school. And this will give you some one-on-one time to ask some questions and to really sort of explore the industry, and maybe you'll be inspired and find a niche that you feel passionate about today. So I want to start by introducing our panel. First, Stuart Miller, who graduated from GA in 1990. He has been working at The Daily Show since 2003, right? Producing more than 500 episodes, or even more than that. Sounds okay.
Well, it's just that.
Okay. We'll say between 500 and 1,000. Okay. Of course, The Daily Show is an Emmy award-winning satirical news program, which I'm sure many of you are a fan of. I certainly am. He's also produced several documentaries, including Farrell Takes the Field, Jeff Ross Rose's Criminals, D.L. Hughley, The Endangered List, and The Rally to Restore Sanity and/or Fear, or Fear. Love that title. Paul Mezzi is visiting. Well, actually, I thought you were visiting from New York, but you live here in Newtown.
Yeah.
Close by. Okay. And commutes to New York City. This is an impressive resume. He is the founder of Journeyman Pictures and is currently a producer in residence at CineReach. He's produced a number of critically acclaimed films, including the Academy Award-nominated Maria Full of Grace, as well as Hack Nelson, which received an Oscar nomination. His most recent projects include Beasts of Southern Wild, which received 4 Academy nominations, right? Okay. And he won an award at the Cannes Film Festival in 2012, and the list goes on and on and on. But most importantly, and I think this was so interesting, and maybe this is something we can touch on, he's the chief architect, one of the chief architects of the Transparency Project, which is a process and protocol for new data models that measures the success of film and how that's changing, correct? Yeah. So I think that's important, certainly for your generation, how the industry is evolving rather. And next is Susanna Ludwig. Hi, Susanna. She said we bookmarked the ends of the women. Okay. She's been deemed a visionary independent producer by the Sundance Film Institute, and she was awarded the prestigious Mark Silverman Fellowship. She produced the Academy Award-nominated documentary King's Point and was the co-creator and executive producer of the docuseries Boomtown. She's produced numerous other documentaries, including Stolen, and she's currently developing a diverse slate of projects, including Isabel X and a docu-web series on meditation. And she is also the executive producer and co-founder of Snapdragon Films. Tim McAleer. I had so much trouble, I don't know why. I got it right, okay, I'm so proud of myself. No need for applause. And Tim graduated in 2009, so he is just a few years younger than I am. That was a joke too. He also works in the programming department at BBC America. I love BBC. As a senior coordinator of projects and accounts and program content. In addition, he worked as an intern for Snag Films, which streams over 5,000 movies, TVs, episodes, and documentaries. An internship, as I'm sure you'll tell us later, are very important in launching careers. Yeah. Okay, so why don't we start, maybe we could start there, just what got your interest for you to pursue even just the internship and how that sort of launched your career?
Sure. Well, the job I have now came out of an internship. I interned a few years ago on a film called Central Park 5, and that's how I ended up having the job I have now. That's how I've gotten actually all of my jobs. Interning is a great experience because you get to kind of work in a variety of fields, perhaps beyond what you will actually end up doing for money later on. That's sort of the downside of the internship. It's a lot of money, but that's changing a little bit. Hopefully by the time you all get to school.
You get free coffee though.
You definitely get free coffee for other people. And, there's lots of great things about an internship. You get to be in an environment you wouldn't necessarily be in otherwise as a young person and experience a lot of pretty cool people in your working environment.
Stuart, did you have an internship?
I did. I had just one, but it led to a job. And it was at Dateline NBC, and then I worked there.
That doesn't count.
But yeah, it was terrific, and I would second that. It's the not just the experience you pick up in on the job there, interning and seeing how other people that are working in the field and what they do, but a lot of these people wind up years later, they're your colleagues that you intern with. A lot of people end up staying in the industry. I'm sure you guys have seen the same thing. And that's terrific too. And actually they are paying, I think, a lot of internships. I know The Daily Show,
That really is changing.
because of some class action lawsuits, most internships are now paid. So, which is an added bonus. So yeah, I would highly, you guys are still a few years away from that, but I highly recommend that. Although I think for my senior project, I think I worked at BBC, actually. I don't know if they still do it.
Probably your best senior project.
It was super fun.
Yeah, Paul, can I ask you, just because I think they covered the value of internships, but I don't know if you've had interns that you can sort of give advice from that perspective, what they had to add or contribute to your creative process?
Sure. The mentorship, in New York, it was a fairly robust film community. And the idea of mentorship is sort of a fundamental aspect of being able to have people around you that you're training on a constant basis. So whether it's interns or entry-level positions, I'm often working with young people as they're developing their craft. And because in order to have a robust film community, you have to constantly have that training coming up so that we can continue to make films. The films I'm making are normally on fairly low budgets. So it's a unique opportunity to have a lot of entry-level positions where people can get some training on the job, and that also allows you to be able to make films at a certain scale that you couldn't make otherwise. And so I've had formal people that have trained with me over a number of years, including Susanna worked with me for about 4 years, and I've had a series of people that come up sort of as sort of junior associates and then came on to be able to produce themselves, and then eventually sort of graduate and go on their own paths. So that's been a pretty, a pretty standard way of operating.
And Susanna, tell us a little about that experience with Paul, and also just translating what you learn in the classroom, because hopefully regardless of what area you get into, will have the opportunity to do an internship, several if possible. I think that probably the more the better, whether throughout college. I know there's some requirements, but I know myself, that's how I started my first job, was through my internship. But if you could just talk about your experience and how what you learned in school sort of helped you with your internship.
So I actually never had a formal internship as what we're talking about, but I did start off as a production assistant in the business. In fact, my first job out of college, I got an undergraduate degree in filmmaking, and then my first job out of college was actually working as a bird wrangler on The Birds 2, physically wrangling birds, which is my funny story. I found myself working in North Carolina wrangling birds, which is a very strange existence. However, it was a very big budget LA movie with a huge crew, and I think the best way to think about an internship is actually that you're sort of a sponge taking in the structure of how a movie or a project is run, because I learned a huge amount about what it takes to make a big movie, who the different departments are, how things are run, what the hierarchy is, and all of that was hugely useful later when a few years after that, started working for Paul and worked on 5 movies with him in a period of 4 years. And he was and is the best mentor ever, I have to say. But I think that as an intern, a big part of what you're doing is sort of taking it all in and quietly assessing for yourself what parts of what you're learning are coming up with resonance with you. Are you sort of fascinated by what's going on in the camera department? Or are you kind of intrigued by how a producer is putting together numbers? Or is it the makeup woman seems pretty cool? Or whatever it is that's sort of striking to you, and that way you can kind of start to take steps after your internship towards whatever might affect your next decision.
And I think that's good advice, because I think a lot of times you don't know all the moving parts, and you can get in there and sort of find something that you feel connected with, and you should go in probably with an open mind. So that being said, all of you had some form of an internship. Can you tell the students what was the moment, or maybe there were several moments, that you had that aha, like, this is what I want to do, this is my passion, and this is what I'm going to pursue?
Sure. I briefly worked in scripted development at BBC America, as you said. And I thought I really wanted to write. A lot of kids I went to school with really intended to write and direct. Those were like the 2 jobs they knew they could have. After doing that for a little while, I would write sort of analysis on the scripts that I would read. I would like all these scripts that almost none of them got made, and all the ones I didn't like seemed to be getting made. And that's when I went and started working in documentary. That's a big part of. I found factual entertainment or factual programming more rewarding for what I was doing. I started working in education at BBC, and that was sort of a big turning point for me when I switched departments and jumped out of scripted. It's not for everyone, but I really thought I knew what I wanted to do, and that changed very quickly, which is sort of, I guess the teaching moment that I need to get in.
Okay, great. And Stu, you have sort of an interesting story, because you've been with The Daily Show for a long time.
Yeah.
Sort of, in this industry, it's rare. I mean, a lot of times you jump around, especially in the beginning, but you've had quite a long
Steady
career.
employment, yeah. long time.
I was trying to say
rare.
more politically correct, not
Yeah,
scare
sure.
everyone.
I would say one thing that's interesting is backing up to the other finding the right. When this was kind of the thing I wanted to do. I think there was a lot of in my 20s. There was a lot of time finding out what I didn't really enjoy, and I worked in scripted development as well for a movie producer, and it didn't quite click to me in the way that I thought that it would. Like, oh, this is going to be cool working for this very successful movie producer, and it was kind of boring. And it was again reading tons of scripts, and nothing was ever getting made. Shelves full of things that we thought that would never get made. But I actually really enjoyed news, and I liked the immediacy of it, and the fact that you would film something, it would air, and that'd be it, and move on, where film can take it can take a long time. Be incredibly satisfying when it finally does make it to the screen, but it can take quite a while. I'm an impatient person, I guess. And then I worked for 48 Hours for a little while, which is a news magazine show on Saturday nights, and I was an associate producer there, and I loved that job. I would just fly all around the world, really. And then sort of back into a Daily Show job, which somebody recommended me, and I sent some pitches were okay, then a friend of mine in the stand-up who rewrote them for me, and they were funny, and then I got hired there. But there's a moment, it's interesting. There's certainly the idea that I wanted to work in entertainment. That seed was planted in any of these jobs. So I don't want to say in this field, where in this field. And that's the one thing you guys will see is that it's beyond just writer, director, producer even. There are so many jobs, and it's such a big field that finding your place in it is what takes a bit of time, a bit of doing. But when you do settle, you'll be happy.
Paul and Susanna, if I could just ask you to not only address that, but elaborate, because I think in many industries and professions, there's a definitive path. And you graduate from high school, you go to college and major in something, and maybe you go to grad school, and then you get a job. This is a little bit different. There are different ways of getting where you ultimately want to be. So if you maybe want to elaborate on your aha moment or all the things that you did that you didn't like, but also just that you have to keep an open mind. There's no one way to get to your final destination.
I guess my aha moment, because I did end up having a moment in my life where I was like, oh, I want to tell stories, I want to be a filmmaker. And I think at that point, being a filmmaker is sort of the director, and the director, sort of the auteur theory is like the director's vision, and then all these people come scramble around to work it, as craftsmen, but it's really, there's one sort of storyteller at the pinnacle of it all. And I guess my aha moment was I realized that I wasn't a very strong writer, and a lot of my short films were fairly, indiscernible. I had a certain. In undergrad I was studying photography, and so I had a photographic sense of things, but not necessarily a good story sense at that time. And it was during making a short film that I made in collaboration with a friend of mine up in the Onondaga Reservation up in northern New York, where I suddenly realized there were two things. One is that the idea of being a storyteller wasn't the sole domain of the director, the writer, and sort of you collaborate on a story as you contribute to the actual making of the film. Everybody in that circle who's working on the film is collaborating and contributing to the story, and it's all essential. And the thing that emerges is the merging from all these talents that sort of converge in a moment. And even though there's an inspirational idea that's probably being led by the director, or maybe is being inspired by that, the actual product itself is elevated, is really the result of everyone's contribution. And so that was a really liberating thought for me, because I was like, oh, I can be a storyteller, I can work in this business, and it doesn't mean I have to be an auteur. I don't have to be, and that freed me up to actually just to contribute what I could do well, and feel completely ownership of what I was creating. So to me, that was a real seminal moment. And whether I was working, because I did a lot of other craft jobs within the film industry, whether I was working in sound or in post-production or in whatever capacity, I always felt like I'm still pursuing my goal, which is to contribute to actual storytelling. And I always chose jobs that were linked to stories that I wanted to see come into the world, that I felt I could contribute something specifically towards.
I sort of always knew, even pretty early on, maybe in college, that I wanted to tell real stories, because I felt like truth is more interesting than fiction, at least to me, a lot of times. But I think it came together a little bit later, like maybe in my late 20s. And I think part of what began to be clear is that being a producer felt very natural to me. So my natural talents, which are sort of more about working with people or managing money or coming up with strategy or problem solving felt there. The job of being a producer, which involves all of those things, felt very natural to me, as opposed to sort of what Paul's saying. I'm not really good myself at coming up with shots or coming up with a story out of nowhere. Like, my brain doesn't really work like that. So when I was in situations where I was forced to come up with a new story or come up with shots to go with the story, I really couldn't do that. I struggled a lot. But when it came to having a team full of people and how do I work with them and how do I make sure everybody is the best that they can be and how do I create an environment where people can achieve what needs to happen for the job getting done, how do I motivate people, how do I keep us on schedule, all of that stuff came very naturally to me. And I began to get clearer and clearer as I got older that in some ways, figuring out what you're meant to do in life is about that, is about listening to what is natural to you and then learning as much as you can to be as good at it as you can. But when you're sort of forcing things, it's harder. So then once I sort of decided I was going to be a producer, I actually at one point took a year off and did a lot of thinking about, maybe I should go run a yoga studio or open a bookstore or do something totally unrelated because it was hard doing what we do. But then I realized, no, I'm actually pretty good at this and I actually like it and it's fun and it's what I'm supposed to do. So how can I make it as great of a thing as possible?
And I'm assuming too that, because I know that I too, everyone goes through periods of time where they feel as though the emotions at work are very robotic and you go through a bit of burnout, which I think is natural. But if you really, someone once told me, one of my bosses said, if you once love something, you'll probably love it again. So you have to sort of be patient and muscle through that. Just on a day-to-day basis, and then I'd love to sort of come around and see if the students have any questions. But just on a day-to-day basis, because you all have sort of unique positions within the industry, what can you tell us about your day? If you could just give us a few examples, because certainly it's very different from the Daily Show than to doing a documentary, which can take years. So why don't you describe a little bit about your daily activity?
Sure, yeah. So the project I'm coming off of right now is an upcoming Ken Burns documentary series about Jackie Robinson. The best way to explain what I did is if you know the little checkbox in iMovie that says Ken Burns effect, I oversaw that for the film, which is actually like 4 people doing that. So my day-to-day is coordinating. We had, I think, 650 photos in the show. We had to clean all of them. There's a lot of scratches on photographs from the 1940s. And we put these moves on them, and despite what you might think, it's not a totally arbitrary move. They all have a lot of intention behind them. Our director can be very particular about them at times. And so that's basically my day-to-day, or has been for the past few months. I was part of the editing team.
And Stu, your day is pretty intense because it's based on what's
Yeah.
happening at that moment.
Yeah, well, what I do within the show, I oversee the department that does all the film pieces, those like 5 or 6 minute pieces, which there's quite a bit of work that goes into those, and it works. That process and the writing process for the show are pretty similar. And generally, what it is we, what's really great about the Daily Show is the writing process is incredibly collaborative. So we're all kind of in the room, and there are producers who will present ideas like, oh, here's a story about, about France or something like that, and we'll watch some news clips, and then everyone will kind of just throw ideas into a big pot. Like, here's what we think about this, oh, here's something we can do here. And then that will get assigned out to writers or a producer to sort of shape that into a story. And that involves several people, a bunch of people. It includes the correspondents, Trevor Noah, whoever is sort of assigned to that particular project. And then we eventually, someone will be tasked to, could be me, with like writing the script for that. And we are constantly evaluating it and changing it right up to the minute it's on the air. And for the tape segments where we're out, I'm actually headed out right when we leave here to film something in Las Vegas. It's the same kind of drill where we go in with like a sort of a script, bunch of ideas, questions from people we talk to, and then constantly sort of refining it and working with other people to get it exactly right. And like everyone said, Paul said, it involves a whole bunch of different departments graphics department, sound is a huge part of it, and certainly editing is critical, like can make or break these things. And yeah, my exhaustion.
Fun, yeah. So I guess as a producer or the creative producer in the independent world, like I have to supervise a project usually from the conception of it through the distribution of it, or at least do consulting on the distribution with a distribution partner. And normally the projects I'm working on, which are mostly long format, take 3 to 5 years to complete any single film. And so there's a much longer time frame. So I'll usually be working on 3 or 4 films at the same time, but they'll be at different stages of the process. And so a typical day for me when I'm not actually on set shooting might be I would go in the morning and maybe have a 2-hour meeting with a writer where we're developing a story idea together, and we'd have a session and talk through story notes and character and theme and sort of walk away with a list of things that the writer will then go off and work on for the next month or so. Then I may go to a meeting that's based on designing a poster for a film that we're releasing, and we may be giving comments and feedback in terms of, does this poster represent the film? What's it communicating to an audience? Is it intriguing? Is it, is it being authentic to what the film is? And then I might go to a meeting. I might be negotiating a contract for financing of another project. Then I might go to looking at casting tapes for a project that we're doing early casting on. And then I might go do and have to look through a bunch of cost reports for budgeting for a project that we have to report back to financiers. So there's really it's a lot of changes within the day, which I actually like because I'm not doing the same thing. But they're all connected in service of creating a final film. And a lot of the dialogues that are happening, the decisions you're making, are all in service of being able to create the best path to success for that film, both in terms of creative success and in terms of choosing an idea that you feel has resonance and is going to be meaningful and have an audience, and then crafting that film so that it has the best chance of actually becoming the best version of itself, and then coming up with a really viable business plan that allows that film to get made within a reasonable amount of money that allows it to get in the marketplace, and then making sure that the film is able to have a good marketing strategy to actually be seen by audiences in the way it should. And so there's a continuum all in service of, you think there's a story that has a value that's going to deliver a certain experience quality to an audience, and you sort of, so everything you're doing, even though they're very disparate, are all linked in terms of what the end goal is, and all in service of trying to find the best path to success for an individual project.
Susanna, before I do Paul, I just have one question is for our students. So as far as the length of time that it takes to complete the documentary, what would you say is the skill set, and Susanna, you can answer this as well, that you need to have to see a project of that length through? Because it's very different from doing something different on a day-to-day basis where it's very fast-paced and the topic changes from week to week or hour to hour, really. So what should our advice would you give to a student who is looking into getting into documentary?
Documentaries can take as long or as short as sort of the subject at hand. So I've worked on films that have taken 7 years. I've worked on other films that have been 1 day of shooting and then are out in the marketplace pretty quickly. So it sort of depends on what the scope of the story that you're trying to tell is. But I think that documentaries in general feature-length documentaries, I should say, take probably longer than narrative films in general. So if you are interested in documentary making, feature-length films, you have to sort of be in it for the long haul and kind of know that the films are going to have their own life, and you have to have a certain level of patience to ride that journey.
And Paul, I meant films too. I said documentary, but films too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because the development takes a long time, and a lot of what you're trying to figure out in the script is, I'm trying to solve as many problems as I can and create as many opportunities as I can in the writing of the script. But then the writing process kind of continues throughout, even when you're shooting. You're thinking about the same sort of story, thematic, character, drama elements. And then when you're editing, it's almost like you're back in the writing phase, but with different tools and different collaborators. But if from the time I have a solid script, it's usually a 2-year process to get a film made. And in a doc, because I know the story. I know the story I want to tell, and it's really about bringing all the elements together again. In the doc, you're a lot of times I find you're figuring out the story as you're going through, so it's a much more fluid process. And we've had docs that have been 5 or 7 years.
You're adjusting as you go along too, to new information.
Yeah, and there's a moment when you realize fully what your story is. You know what your topic is, your subject matter is, but you don't necessarily know what your story is. So like that moment may happen a year in, may happen 2 months in. But when that happens, then I think you're on a path to sort of predict the trajectory of the project. But sometimes it's taken, we just wrapped a documentary now that took about 3 years to really figure out what is the story that we should be telling. Not the story that we can tell, but we have all this material, there's lots of ways in which we do this. What's the story we should be telling? And that's not, some of that takes a while to discover. But the process is fun. It's not like a desperate process. It's fun to go in every day and think about story and look at material and learn about the world and get into dailies and decide to go out and shoot more stuff. It's like an investigation, which I think the ups and downs of that are incredibly invigorating. So it's not just get to the end result. To me, the process of making films and the journey of that and what you discover and learn is incredibly rewarding. So it's not all like, oh my God, there's 5 years to make a film. Those years are rich and rewarding, and you grow and learn and become a very incredible person.
I have one quick thing, which is somewhat related about the writing process. You know, one of the things that's maybe one of the best things I learned from at the Daily Show is that there are days like waiting for sort of that divine intervention for the amazing joke that's going to come. Like, yeah, you do hit some days like that, but mostly, like, there are a lot of days where you're just not feeling it, but those are the days that you really have to write, and you really, like, that's where you kind of, well, keep your job. But it's really an important, it's important because there are a lot of days that are just, you're grinding along, and it's February, and it's cold, and you don't necessarily feel like being there, but you still got a show to do. And I think that is, it takes a while, maybe it just does take that long to figure that out, but that's important because you get better on those are the days you get better too as a writer, or when you're not really as fully, the idea may not be as great or something like that, but trying to make something of it, that's really where you run a lot.
I think you can all see that everyone here is a storyteller too, regardless of the specific area that they're in. So that being said, I know you are all storytellers as well. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? Can I get a volunteer I can come over to you if that's easier. If not, I have plenty of other questions, but I just want to make sure I open it up because this really is for you to ask questions, and I know you're going to do breakaway sessions later. But if there's anything, even just about being a writer or a storyteller, or even just some questions about what each of their job entails, what roles there are. Does anyone want to step forward and ask? Not yet? Okay. When you're ready, just shout out. Okay.
Forward? Sure.
So as you guys are mainly, I feel like you guys are mainly producers, you get all this stuff out. How do you choose like who makes them, like specifically who's on set every single day directing it, or who do you get, how do you choose the people you work with?
On a typical project, I'm working with at least probably on the independent narrative film, 100 people. So it's building a whole sort of family around an endeavor, and it doesn't always start with the director. And so I think it's often specific to me of the subject matter, the world I'm entering into, and finding out what is the connection of the person I'm hiring to what we're making. And because there's a value that's added beyond the skill set. There's a value added to like them being able to contribute to the bigger creative endeavor. And so often when we're shooting, we'll hire locally within areas because they'll have invaluable sort of insight into the world in which we're setting the film. And on the creative side, I'm trying to find a director who also, if I understand like what are the essential challenges to telling this story, is it about understanding irony or comedy? Is it about really understanding how to sequence an action, series. Is it how to sustain tension? Is it all about the actors? Someone who's incredibly good with directing actors. And so a different film will call for different skills, and then you're seeking out the people with those specific skill sets. In the indie world, a lot of times the directors are involved in the writing process. So sometimes you'll have that person will be collaborating early on, and that sort of shows, and then you're building a team around that again, who's shooting it or who's editing it. Will often be directly related to what are you making and what are the specific skills that person brings, and also what is the connection you can have to the story you're telling that can also provide this other valuable creative
Got a question for you.
How often are you, when you're out, when you're filming, and you see, okay, this is just, scripting-wise, it just isn't working, we need to change it? Like, are you right there, or you kind of just go with, like, this worked on the page, and let's just go with it, or are you, what happens in those situations? The scene's not quite working out.
That's really a nightmare. But no, I've done everything from shut down and stop filming and regroup to push through it and then evaluate what you have.
Okay.
But the biggest thing is being able to recognize that. The worst thing that happens is you're in denial and you're just trying to get through your day. It's on the page, it's got to work, let's just shoot it. So if you can recognize that something's not working, you immediately make adjustments and experiment. And I always think about what is the intent of the scene. Like in this scene, this character has to realize X, right? And so if you've been part of the development of the writing process, as a creative producer on set, you remind the team, like it doesn't matter if they pick up the glass of water, if they walk to the window, the lights go on, if it's raining or the scene is dark, like because our lights aren't working, the generator collapsed, now it's raining. Like what really matters is this moment of this character feel as they're all alone, right? All we need to walk away with today is some idea of capturing that moment. And so like you go with the flow. You say, oh, it's actually perfect the lights are out. Like what a great metaphor for suddenly like feeling alone in the world. Let's use that. And so you always go down to the essence of what is this scene about. And that liberates you to find some solution. It may not, rather than feeling sort of stymied or being in denial, to just pushing through something absolutely something that's not working and end up being trapped.
So for what I do, because I make documentaries in all different forms, I own a company that makes commercials and corporate videos for TV, and also I oversee a lot of long format documentaries. But both endeavors are primarily documentary, real people, getting real people to talk scenarios. So for us, what's really important when we're hiring is actually, it's as much about the technical skill as it is about the vibe of the person. Because when I'm setting up a shoot, whether it's like last Friday I shot a commercial for Johnson & Johnson and I had 70 people on spot where we were getting real teenage girls to talk about their skin. And yesterday I shot a documentary in a school where I was asking 8-year-olds how they feel about their school. So yesterday I had 2 crew people, last Friday I had 70, but in either case, it's very much about who is the right person for this job that can make the people in the room feel safe. Because if I'm not doing that and not allowing for them to tell their truth, then it doesn't matter. And it all could go away. Because it's 100% about making that safe environment for people, to be honest.
Are there any other students that want to?
What's the average budget for a low-budget film, and how do you go about getting that funding?
Well, our industry in the independent world has sort of collapsed a few years ago, but it's getting to build back. So budgets are going up a little bit, but an average budget right now in the independent world, you're making a film basically on spec, and then you're going to license it to a distributor, as opposed to a film that's sort of commissioned within the studio system to be made, which tend to be bigger blockbuster films that are often based on a pre-existing material, like a comic book or a story or a book, as opposed to a completely original concept that has no underlying material. So in the indie world, when we're just coming up with a story and running with it on our own, it's right now the reasonable funding you might expect if you have experience and can sort of guarantee you'll finish the film is between $1 and $1.5 million. So which is a very tight amount of money for what it takes to make a film. But that's gone up from being under $1 million a few years ago. And then on a micro budget level where it's just you go out with friends and sort of shoot a film for almost the money, it's in the $120,000 range to actually finish a film that can go into the marketplace. So that's, I would say in the indie world, that's the range, maybe 200, 250 to 1.5. And then beyond that, you're really in a hybrid of the studio world where you have to bring in certain actors who have certain valuations in certain markets and then you're actually financing less based on sort of equity risk financing than you are based on what are called pre-sales, basically commitments from distributors to release the film in certain markets that can guarantee certain payments, and also on bank loans and basically collateralized debt and things that sound much more like Wall Street type schemes, as opposed to let me raise some money from family, friends, and a few sort of high-risk investors, which is really what we're doing in the world.
I actually, oh, go ahead.
So if someone has an idea for a movie, what do they do? Where do they go with it? What are their steps in the process?
Well, yeah, and if it's okay, that's actually the question I was going to ask for students who are looking to make a film.
Right.
What would you say, how do they dig in deep to the creative process, or what would they look to inspire them, and then how would they go about starting that?
Well, I would say that you need a script now. I don't know if you would agree with that. Like there are, I think the days of pitching an idea. I'm saying from the TV side, I have a tiny bit dipped my toe in the film world. But unless you are at least speaking on the studio side, the super established kind of comic or actor of like an idea isn't going to cut it. Like you need the actual product in the script. I think things used to work a little bit more like that. But even in these sort of like semi-scripted world of television or Comedy Central, you can have a script. So, which is great for you guys to bring exercise. Or anything else, but yeah, that's it.
I think it depends if you're talking about being a writer or being a director. As a writer, you definitely just need to write, and you need to have a script. You need to have a proof of that. It's not just the idea, but it's like how that idea has been told. And as a director, right now I probably wouldn't hire someone to direct unless there was something with the concept, because you're hiring someone who has a specific aesthetic, a specific way of approaching the grammar of film. I don't need to know that my director understands the grammar of film. They understand film language. They understand how to work with actors. I have no way to evaluate the actual skill sets into which I'm hiring a director unless I've seen material. So these are all crafts that you learn by doing. And so a director who's, even if in their backyard, has been working, shooting, editing, understanding story, understanding the grammar of film, and they're coming with 5 or 6 pieces, there's the beginning of a conversation. Otherwise, it's just an abstract idea. Like, I have an idea and I can direct. Well, it's a craft that you have to work on. And as a writer, if you've been writing since high school, short stories, whatever you've been writing, and then you come up and you have the short story you wrote and the script you wrote, and it's a really great idea. And the way, through the writing, you understand, or this person understands the craft of the story. This person's creating an indelible character. This is a film that has something special. Unique voice. Then it's going to catch the attention.
Which reiterates, so the 10th anniversary of the Writing Center here, regardless of what sort of role you want to take in the industry, it's really important to hone those writing skills and also articulate your idea in a way that not only is attractive to the audiences, but whoever's going to fund your film, your documentary, or give you a job. So I don't know if you want to talk even from an editing perspective, interpreting writing, being able to look at it and sort of draw from that and translate that to
Yeah, the company I work for now actually makes documentaries in a way that not necessarily everyone works, which is they work entirely off of paper edits. So every Ken Burns film is actually written out in a script form first, and then they hand that to an editor who has a lot of archival footage to work with, a lot of photographs to work with, and they edit based on that. So kind of no matter what world you're in, it seems that writing keeps coming up. And also briefly on the funding, just on the way, way low budget level, coming out of grad school kind of level. Recently I had a friend who got a grant from Sundance, and the way that she basically did that, she's been making this film on and off in between her jobs for 2 years, and she had about a 10-minute piece to show, and that's how she got it. So it's all, I think, especially these days, about having something to show, something that is maybe a microcosm of what you want your film to eventually be.
I was going to say something about how to start for documentaries. I think in some ways, in this day and age, with our technology and our phones, we're actually in an amazing position, much better than when I went to film school. Because really, to get going on shooting a documentary, you just should start shooting. And the best way is to figure out what is your topic or your subject and spend time with that person or that idea and actually start documenting and seeing, is there something here? Does this story have further to go, or do I interview them one time and there's nothing there, it's not interesting? But because we have amazing iPhones now, you can do it really easily, and as everybody's saying, then you sort of have proof of concept, which then allows you to take it further and explore what could the next steps be, but be, at least starting to hone it and understand it, and the more you do it, the greater understanding you have about what is in front of you.
I was just wondering how many jobs each of you went through before you got to where you are now, or where you are now.
A lot. Oh man, that's a lot. That's a big number. I'm gonna
What
say.
episodes you produced?
Oh yeah, it feels like they're about the same. I would say probably 5, at least 5 or 6 or 7 jobs. I would say, and it keeps. I mean, by the nature of the industry, I guess like depending on what you call a job, because like right now I'm at the Daily Show, but I could very well be a year from now writing on a sitcom kind of a show, which would be kind of a different job. So it's always sort of evolving. I think when you look back in your career, you'll see that many people in the entertainment business have many different jobs within the industry. But yeah, there'll be a bunch, which is great. That's like the fun of it,
Yeah. Back to the internship thing. I had 7 internships. 6 of them were unpaid. That was tough. So I guess I'm not counting all the other part-time jobs I did while doing the unpaid internships. I'm only on my 3rd job though out of school. So that's not too bad. But internships are really important and increasingly count as work experience, though sort of on a different level, which is interesting. That's my number.
I don't know exactly how many I had because I'm kind of old, but but I will say that every step in my career gave me wisdom and knowledge that then advanced my next step. So for example, I worked with Paul for a number of years, and we worked on mostly narrative films, which I haven't worked in narrative filmmaking since then. But what I learned working with him are skills and tools and knowledge that I still use every single day in my producing life, even though I'm not producing the same kinds of films as we made together. So I think every single step that you take, every job that you have, every opportunity that you have to keep in mind all the time that it is advancing you. And you might not know how and in what way and what about it is advancing you, but if you sort of trust and try to make the best holistic decisions for each step, then it will bring you something that will educate you in some way. Like I worked, for example, for a very high-level executive at Miramax for 2 years. And I was her assistant, and I did things like wait in her house for her dry cleaning to come, and all kinds of other crazy things like that. However, I also got to be on the phone with major agents and met a lot of major actors and understood the process of how scripts got made from the studio side, and began to learn a lot about the way the studio system is structured. And so for me later on, even though all of that other crazy stuff I did with her was crazy, it helped me to understand the landscape of the business in a way that was great.
So no experience is really a bad experience. Like you said before, some of it's a process of elimination, finding the things you don't like to do. And also you have to think outside the box, I'm assuming. It's not always going to be right in front of you to take everything around you too. Suzanne, I don't know what kind of time we're running out then. Okay, can we get one more question? That's okay.
Did you, for each one of you, did you go to film school, and do you have any advice for seniors who are embarking on film school? Aside from internships.
Sure. I did go to film school. The one thing that, I went to NYU for film, the one thing that they emphasized that I would just repeat here is to come out of film school with a specific craft you can trade on. I've had 3 jobs in terms of something I go to every day that is my gainful employment, but I've had tons of freelance jobs, editing mostly, and so I'd say that after going to film school, coming out with something that you can trade on that can earn you money so that you can pay your rent, it's very helpful.
I also went to NYU, and I would say currently went to film school. I was in the one in Gallatin, which is the ones where you don't have to really declare a major. But I would, I don't know, I think, I don't know if I necessarily recommend if you need to go to film school. How do you feel about that?
I don't think so, actually, yeah.
Yeah, although I do regret that I never really had an intensive time to learn about the camera, which I wish I always wish I had a few 6. I know, I always wish I had some time off to take some classes. That's true, no, that's very true. But yeah, I don't think you need to feel the pressure that you need to go to film school. There are certainly, at least on my side of the business, there are plenty of people that did not. A lot of people went to graduate film school too.
I went to graduate film school. Undergraduate, I studied photography, and then I took a few years off, and I was interested in music. And in that time, I also took classes in audio recording and did some sound recording for film, although that was sort of tangential. And then when I went to graduate school in film, at that time, which dates me, but it was really, went to school to be a filmmaker, which meant to be a director. There were no producing programs. The 2 tracks, basically. The writing program was not even in the film school, which is a separate program. And you either went in and you became a cinematographer or a director, basically. But I did learn a craft there, which I really doubled down on sound, and I learned, and I became I had a job at film school to do all the mixing for sound. I did a lot of sound editing, so I came out with a tangible skill, which again, even though I knew I wanted to be a storyteller, sound obviously is related to storytelling in film, but I came out with a tangible skill, so I could immediately get work on sets, doing sound recording, boom operating. I could do post-production sound and mixing, so we came out with a very specific skill set that you're also involved in the story, in the creation of stories. So anytime we're looking at how many jobs you have, each job is a building block. So you really think about what is it I'm going to be exposed to, what can I do in this job, and probably putting some time limit on it. In other words, I want to get this out of this, and I'm going to give myself 4 or 5 months to learn that thing. And then probably you were pretty, it sounds like your trajectory was almost perfect. To go through 6 or 7 internships and then land a job, come out of school with a skill set. That would be almost an ideal path in a way. And that's fairly quick. And who knows, in 3 years he's now producing his own.
You didn't go that way for all my classes.
No. But I'm saying yours is actually a very successful case. But you have to create a path and understand why you're making choices. No one's going to offer you anything. You go to the film school, your degree means really nothing. All it means is what skills, actual craft skills, did you develop that you can parlay? Did you edit 5 films? Were you a sound mixer? Did you shoot 3 films and you understand cinematography? Did you write? Did you produce? Did you direct 2 short films? So really it's what you come out with, what craft. And the second thing is the group of people you meet there often become your collaborators. And like when I came out of film school, the short films that I was sort of producing as a collaborator, and then we went on to make features together. So we basically weren't asking anyone's permission. That once you're around a group of people and you realize, oh, you can edit, you can shoot, you're a great writer, I love your story, like I love the way you direct some of those actors, and you bring the group together and you begin to make your own movies. And it's another, depending on what community you're in, but there's a lot of communities in Portland and Austin New York and San Francisco, where it's really a community of storytellers, young, are not waiting for permission to work, and they're sort of creating their own work. And I've never actually worked for anyone, partly because that's how it just came up. I just kept making things and bringing around me people that I have met and that I ran into, and sort of building a team and say, okay, let's make this. What do we need? A camera. We need to raise money. Okay, I can raise money. You get to go get a camera, and you build it together. So really coming out of school with a craft and a skill set is what's essential.
I did go to undergraduate and graduate film school, actually. And I don't think in the end I needed to go to graduate film school, but I'm glad. At the time I was happy I was doing it, and the reason I did it at the time was because I wanted to have the potential to teach later down the line if I ever got tired of being on set, which I still could do because I do have a master's. So that was a good thing to do at the time. I think the best reason to go to film school are twofold, both of which have sort of been said, but I'm going to say them in a slightly different way. One way is to just immerse yourself when you're in film school. That's sort of all you're doing, is making films all the time. You're spending day in and day out making films, crafting your story, working on set, getting to know how it works, and that's sort of what you're paying for by being in film school, but it's worth it because when you emerge from it, you have a big basis to understand the way movies are made. And then secondly, to what Paul said, you also are creating a community, which is actually part of the reason why I went to graduate school, because I moved to New York and decided that I wanted to build my own community, and the best way to do that was to jump into a master's program, which I didn't make the best choice at the time because the master's program I went to was a weird one in that I went to the New School for Social Research, and most of the students at that program are also working full-time, so you could have a class with somebody once and then never see them again, which is unusual. Most film schools, when you jump in with your group of students, you're like in it with them for the whole program, and you do build this sort of amazing group of collaborators that is really important to take your skill set to the next level. So I think those two reasons are a reason to do it. I don't think you need to go to film school to be in the business, but I think it can be really super helpful.
So you'll put in the same amount of time. So if you don't go to film school, you'll do internships and entry-level jobs. And the 4 years you would have been in film school, you can do the same thing. Immerse yourself, get on set, immediately sign up for find out what productions you're going to sign up and immerse yourself. And that's the luxury. The film school is extremely expensive, but the luxury is you're basically committing yourself to immersing, this immersive experience. But I really think in filmmaking, I don't know how much education really helps. A lot of the information, you have to watch a lot of films, you have to read a lot of books, you have to analyze films, and you have to practice your craft. And so all those things can be done, it can be done, if you're a disciplined person, you can do them starting today. You don't necessarily have to go to school to learn that.
Maybe before we wrap up, just along the lines of what you were saying, if you don't, this probably happens organically in film school, but if you decide to not go to film school, do you think it's a good idea, just because there are so many different roles within documentaries, within film, within TV, that you get a sense of what things you don't like, maybe take some courses in something that doesn't necessarily interest you, but because then you'll have a general empathy and understanding of what other people who you work with go through, or do you think do you think that would be non-productive?
I don't think you need to take classes of something that doesn't interest you. I would say the reverse. I would say if things are speaking to you or triggering things, it's good to take a class here or there, or even if it's a quick workshop, even if it's like when I first moved to New York before I started my master's program, I did, and I had been an undergrad, but it had been a couple of years, I took this very sort of well-known class at NYU called Sight and Sound, where you're like thrown into filmmaking for 5 intensive weeks. And I was reminded, because it had been 2 years since my undergrad experience at that time, that I'm not a director. As I said before, I'm not good at coming up with shots, I'm not good at writing scripts, but being in that experience made it very clear to me, because that's what I was assigned to do, and I was struggling. I mean, my films are okay, but I'm not a director, and I know that. So, but I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have tried it, and it felt like the right step to try it.
So you have an appreciation for what a director does.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think that we're wrapped up, and I know you guys have an exciting day ahead of you. So thank you for being great listeners and all your questions, and thank you so much to our panel for sharing your experiences with us and your honesty and giving some great advice to our budding filmmakers and screenwriters and editors, directors, actors. So good luck the rest of the day, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And that concludes our panel portion of the program. We're going to break for lunch, which is just down the hallway in the common room. We can head over there, and then we'll be getting into our breakout sessions as well. But thank you again to all of our presenters. We have a little gift here for you from VA, and thank you for being here. And one more time for our panel.